Hello and welcome to, I guess you might call it Tom's Corner. No, actually, Tom Price is here. I'm John Lindsay, and we're going to be talking about civic affairs. And we may have a couple of sessions to do this because our timer here gives us 25 minutes, Tom.
Okay.
So we're okay there. But, you know, there's lots of things to talk about with respect to civic affairs, civic being, of course, communities. And we have quite a few. Our town, our city has identified how many separate communities do we really have in Sudbury since amalgamation or before amalgamation, and now they're still there.
Yes, we have 7 towns that now make up the overall city. So together we have, I guess, 8 communities rolled into one, and we have 12 councillors for those areas, including the city, plus a mayor.
And we can talk, and we will talk probably about amalgamation and the evils of amalgamation as seen by especially those people in the outlying areas. But there are other factors too, and I actually wrote them down. And items of concern, and we'll be talking about them. Transparency with respect to how are we communicated, are we getting the information we need? There's debt. We're talking about debt. And about roads, and about the homeless, about downtown, the new arena, the culture hub, parking, the old hospital, what to do. There's a number of issues, and a lot of them, according to us ordinary citizens, seems to be either neglected, ignored, or other plans are in place that don't address some of these issues.
Yep.
And I know just recently there was talk about the new so-called official plan and the master plan for downtown. And you were there. You had a special presentation.
For the master plan, no, but 2 members of OTOCI were there.
This is for the downtown situation.
Yes, for the downtown master plan update. Yes. And in that session, they asked 20, they kept track of the questions they asked. They asked 20 questions. They never received an answer for one question. They never even were able to engage any of the people there from the city to discuss the issues that they raised. So why they had the session? Well, it's just for the city to show and tell people what we're going to force on you. And that's about the only conclusion we can reach.
So I've been to some of these presentations over the years. They seem to be primarily show, but not too much tell.
Oh, very little tell.
And, I don't like to use this expression, but are we sort of beating a dead horse with respect to the downtown? I know just this past week, 2 other businesses are leaving. There's still concerns about the homeless, concerns about the cleanliness. There's not too much retail left. Are we looking at something that perhaps can't be fixed?
No, anything can be fixed. And if it was a dead horse, of course, we wouldn't have to beat it, would we? Because the dead horse would not be walking.
Right.
But these guys are not only walking, they dove down the rabbit hole of debt with all the enthusiasm of a scared rabbit looking for cover.
With respect to the debt, I know there is a report from I believe they call it the Fraser Institute out of Thunder Bay.
Yes.
And they put out some I guess, commentaries every once in a while about situations, especially here in the north. And here in Sudbury, they seem to have taken a look at our debt situation or possible future debt situation and have indicated that we could have, with increased borrowing, the largest individual citizen debt load of any community in the province. Now, that's food for thought.
And you have to keep in mind that that's just municipal debt. What about personal debt on top of that? And many, many people in the city of Greater Sudbury have maxed out their personal debt. They have no room left to move on personal debt. So when they get increased municipal debt and increased municipal costs, they lose their properties. And we increase the homelessness, which is an interesting fact because since 2014, our homelessness has increased by 27 people per year. That's 2 per month for the last 10 years. More than 2.
Now, we, of course, are not alone. Other municipalities are experiencing the homeless situation as well, too, and the cost of living. And I know when I go grocery shopping, it always seems like I see someone looking at a package and saying, this was $1.50 before, and now it's $3.75. Or maybe not that increase, but I've noticed my favorite Raisin Bran has gone up by $1 for the package.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how much bran and cereals do we make in Canada? We supply the world practically, right? And yet these prices going up. So whether or not that would be considered to be taking advantage as a consumer, or is it really? I don't buy the supply chain thing, but in any event, as you said, it's put the average individual in a bit of a squeeze, because if it's costing them more for basic necessities and taxation, that there's less discretionary, so-called discretionary income, which is really what keeps society moving.
Mm-hmm.
But here we are. What's the solution?
Well,
that's a big question. Sorry.
No, it's not. It's a very small question. And the answer is smart, responsible, and accountable representation. That's the solution. We do not have that. In fact, somebody once referred to our council and city as being a bunch of spendthrifts. Well, they certainly are.
Well, then, no, they weren't always that way. If we look,
yes, they were.
If we look back in time, there was those eras when I seem to remember Mayor Wong, Mayor Gordon seemed to be a little more. The term I think is fiscally responsible.
No, for fiscally responsible, you'd have to go to pre-amalgamation.
Okay.
And at that time, the small communities all had their local mayor or reeve or whatever,
right.
And they were managers. Mm-hmm. They knew how to manage money. They knew how to manage the physical assets of the communities. With amalgamation, we replaced all those managers of the 7 communities with, I hate to call them politicians, but they are, and those politicians are bureaucrats. They're administrators. They do not know how to manage. They know how to administer whatever's written down. If you have a problem and it's in the book how to solve it, they can solve it. But spontaneously, they can't solve anything.
So what you're saying, you need to have people who are more hands-on, perhaps, or more closely connected to the needs of the community?
Absolutely, and know how to manage to get there. Mm-hmm. And management doesn't come easy.
In many organizations, there's developed silos.
Yep.
And sometimes the one silo doesn't know what the other silo is doing, whatever they're responsible for. And I've heard many times that if you want to get something done, it can be a little difficult because they have to go through all these different silos.
Yeah. And
by the time they come to a decision, maybe the need isn't there anymore.
Well, and you're absolutely right. And our city is rife with silos, and not just the ones on Notre Dame. The silos that you're talking about in the organization are even more dangerous than the ones on Notre Dame. But when you get silos, that's a positive, 100% guaranteed indication of lack of management, good management, because management would have all those groups working together.
When you're looking at the pre-amalgamation and the other communities, which are still named, you drive out to the airport, you see Carson there, and then there's Nickel Center, and then which is wrapped up in Carson, of course, right? Yeah. And then you have the Valley communities, and you've got Lively. Now, these communities are still functioning, and in many cases, they're doing a pretty good job. Not maybe the same authority or direction that they had when they were autonomous, but they're still in existence. Is there any hope for these communities?
They're running in spite of the situation that we have. And you're right, people will adapt to almost anything and they will find a way around the bad management, okay? What you fail to mention is that the services, the municipal services being provided, have been deteriorating at an alarming rate to those communities and to the central city, as a fact. Like, if you don't have those services, you have no choice. The city is going to deteriorate. The economic, socioeconomic success of the community, overall community, is going to go downhill. And that's what you heard from the Fraser Institute by the Mr. DiMatteo out of Thunder Bay. Says your debt gets to the point where it's unwieldy. Well,
so when you're ending up spending so much on servicing what you've already borrowed, then there's not as much left over.
Well, no.
That seems pretty simple, really.
Yeah, and this is it's typical. We're trying to spend our way or borrow our way out of debt. Well, that's kind of ridiculous. Who could ever borrow their way out of debt?
Well, the average consumer does so by loading one credit card up from another credit card
Until he goes bankrupt.
and then hopefully they can consolidate this into something that they're going to spend the rest of their lives paying off. But so this is a societal thing. I mean, debt is becoming an accepted four-letter word for a lot of individuals, and it seems now that the city, I know the mayor has said, no problem, we can service this. We can, as a matter of fact, we can borrow up to, wow, this amount of money, and think what we can do with it, which is sort of scary because it looks like what they're thinking of, and they use the term infrastructure rather loosely to include, it would appear, the proposed culture hub and also the new arena, which that's the secondary level of infrastructure, is it not? I mean, that's not basic infrastructure.
It's not even really infrastructure. It's just social services extraneous to the necessary services. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned that we can borrow more money. No, they can't borrow more money. They don't have any money to start with as a city. All they have is taxpayer money.
Right.
And when you get a credit rating from someone like Standard & Poor's, what they're telling us is that, well, the city can tax the taxpayers more because the taxpayers can support that borrowing. Well, Standard & Poor's doesn't take into account the personal debt that those taxpayers have and the cost of the poor services that we're getting from the city to start with. For example, automotive repairs. Automotive repairs today, due to our road conditions, are probably 2 to 3 times what they were 30 years ago. Two things. First of all, the car structures in that aren't as abuse tolerant as they were then. We got rid of the big boats that were strongly built. Now we have tender little cars that have to be treated very, very gently.
Yeah. And not going into a 3-foot pothole.
Not going into a 3-foot pothole or swimming in an 8-foot one.
Well, these are basic. If you hear anything, before we wrap up this particular episode, before you hear anything from citizens in the community about various issues, it all comes back to roads and taxation. And these are interconnected.
Yes, because roads drive their personal costs up if the roads are not maintained. Our roads are not maintained. So
no, we don't just have to listen to our own citizens, people who come, our families that come from out of town, our business people, other guests, they all say the same thing. Enjoy getting here, but wow, what happened to your streets and roads?
Yeah.
And so these are objective views. It's not just us complaining all the time. These are observable situations.
Well, everything that OTOCI does in our reporting and in our newsletters is what we've observed from a major portion of the population. Mm-hmm. We don't make up anything. And to document or to verify what's being said, we only use documentation we can download from the city's website or other credible organizations.
So that's it for this, what you might call introductory first video with Tom and John. Here, we don't know exactly what to call this, Grumpy Old Men or the Critic's Corner, but it's our responsibility as senior citizens and as observing our civic situation to comment. So we'll be back again. Maybe we should talk about roads next time, Tom.
Yeah, it's the same thing all the time.
Until next time, bye for now.
Bye-bye.